who's thinking about camping but hasn't made it into the outdoors because you are afraid of getting eaten by a bear, or perhaps you're thinking, all I'm going to be able to do is eat freeze dried meals, and the last thing you want to do is eat freeze dried food. On this video, I'm going to take care of those ridiculous camping myths that are keeping you on the couch and from enjoying the great outdoors. All right. The first myth we're going to talk about is that you can't camp in the rain. There is a saying among campers, which is there's no such thing as bad weather. There is only bad gear. Rain can happen at any given time. It sometimes can feel like every time you're going to go camping, that's when it's going to rain. And I should say is I don't expect you to go camp and try and enjoy the outdoors if you're expecting torrential rainstorms. But if the rain's, say, a 20% probability, a 30% probability, and it's really just going to be light sprinkles, that should not keep you from getting out there and camping, especially if the rain is at night, because nothing's more peaceful than sleeping through rain hitting the sides of a tent. To be prepared, make sure you have a tent that's waterproof. Any modern tent that you get straight out of the bag is ready to go. But if you've had your tent in storage for a while, yeah, you should double check it by running the garden hose over it to patch up any leaks. Make sure you have your rain gear. Also bring extra tarps that you can hang outside so that you're not stuck in the tent all day long if it does rain during the day. And finally, a lot of state parks and Corps of Engineer campgrounds and national parks and even some private campgrounds will have shelter sites. And if you're only going to go camping like once or twice a year, I always encourage people to book a shelter site if you can get it, because that way, if it does rain, a shelter site, what it is, it's a very small, I hate to call it a cabin because it's 4 walls and a door and a roof, but it is a place for you to go inside and hang out instead of being stuck in a tent if there is inclement weather. Another myth is, the next myth is that campfire smoke follows you around. Right. The truth behind campfire smoke is that, first off, smoke on a campfire has to do with heat. When the campfire is getting started or it's winding down and it's cooling off, that's the most smoke that's going to be generated. Once a campfire gets going and the heat gets going, the smoke is dissipated, because smoke is mostly water. So as soon as it gets hot, the water evaporates and the smoke is gone. But if you are having smoke, it's going to follow the wind. So if you don't want to be stuck in the campfire smoke, figure out where the wind's blowing and put yourself so the wind's blowing from behind you and going to blow the smoke away. And if you're in a group campsite and everybody's sitting in a circle, work on making a wind block so that the smoke will blow away from the group. And that way nobody's getting smoked out of the campfire. If you do think, oh, I get up and the smoke's now changing direction on me, that's just the air patterns can adjust. When people start moving around, it can't actually move the smoke, and that's where it makes it feel like the smoke is following you around. If you're out hiking or backpacking and you come along a clear stream that makes for the perfect Instagram post, don't just take a sip of water from that stream. Just because it looks clear, just because it looks clean, does not mean it's safe to drink. First off, you should always bring enough water with you on a trip, especially if you're car camping. Most campgrounds you're going to camp out will have potable water on site, and you can just use that if you need extra water, or you could just bring water with you in your vehicle. But if you do find yourself on a hike or backpacking and you're needing more water, you have to make the water safe to drink. The safest way is, of course, to boil water, but we have access to modern filters such as Sawyer's. They're simple, they're affordable, they work exceptionally well. Use one of those and to make sure the water is safe to drink. All right. I wanted to make sure you watch some of this video, so I didn't cover the number one myth up front. And the number one myth is that you're going to die in a bear attack. If you are camping in bear country, you have to take precautions, but they're simple. Mostly it's don't put food in your, and also make noise when you're going to go out hiking, and carry bear spray with you if you are particularly going to go out in the backcountry. And if you can, hike with multiple people. If there's never been a recorded attack, much less the death, in groups of 4 or more. Bears, as ferocious as they are more scared of you than you are of them. And just to put in perspective, 22 people a year in the United States, on average, are going to die from a cow. Meanwhile, a death by bear tends to happen about once per year. A happier myth, food. There's a feeling that if you're going to go camping, that you can only eat freeze-dried meals or canned meals, or maybe just hot dogs. And that's not the truth. You can make anything you want on a camping trip as long as you bring the ingredients and equipment with you. Heck, even if you are into backpacking, you'll be surprised what you can make with just a little bit of thought, a little bit of skill, and a little bit of planning. There's this guy, Chef Corso, on YouTube, who's made a whole living out of teaching people how to make fancy meals out backpacking. And so, for example, a simple trick, beef jerky. If you soak beef jerky, it becomes steak. And so that's a great way to add extra flavor and extra texture to any soups you want to make out on trail. Now, look, if you're car camping, you got a cooler, you might even have an electric fridge, you bring your camp stove. You can make quite fancy meals on a camp out. I encourage you to push your culinary skills when you're camping, because we all know everything tastes better cooked over a campfire. It's a myth that you can only camp during summer. Now, I would say this is a myth for people who live up north, because I live in Texas, and the last season I'll ever camp in is summer because it's just too darn hot. But some people will feel like you can, particularly if you're living up north, that you can only camp during the summer. Reality is you can camp all year long. You just have to be prepared for it. Now, here in Texas, I'll admit, we have it easy. You don't camp during summer. Once the temperatures cool off, we'll get anywhere between 4 to 8 months worth of camping, depending on when will summer actually kick in and how long does summer last. But if you are up north and you are dealing with colder temperatures or snow, you can invest in the right gear and the right dust, and you can still camp all year long. And there are benefits of camping in cooler weather. First off is there's fewer crowds. And secondly, there's less bugs. And third, there's almost no snakes. Heck, often you won't find a lot of wildlife. Like the bears are out hibernating somewhere. Another myth is that camping has to be expensive. The reality is camping will cost whatever you decide to make it cost. I mean, if you want to get the fancy tents, the fancy sleeping bags, and so on, the costs can add up. But the reality is you can go camping on a very limited budget, especially if you've got stuff at home that you can use. So, for example, you don't need specialized clothes to go camping. They're going to get dirty. Bring the clothes. Don't bring your nicest suits and dresses to camping. But clothes from home are going to be fine. If you don't even have sleeping bags yet, blankets will work. My mom grew up camping in the 1950s. Sleeping bags literally had not been invented yet. Or if they had been invented, they weren't being used by the average American. They just camped with blankets. A nice wool blanket or a wool blanket blend, a queen size that you can wrap around yourself a couple times, is a very warm covering. One thing is you don't want to sleep directly on the ground. You do want at least an air mattress or a foam mattress topper between you and the ground, because it's not just the fact that the ground is uncomfortable. The ground is colder than your body, and It's going to suck the heat out of your body, trying to equalize the temperature with the ground. And so even if it's like in the 60s, you're 98 degrees, you're going to get cold sleeping directly on the ground if you don't have some kind of insulation layer between you and the ground. In fact, if you really don't have a blanket or a air mattress or a foam mattress, shove it full of leaves, shove it full of grass clippings, sleep on top of it. One, it'll be surprisingly comfortable. And two, it will keep you warm. You do need some kind of shelter, though a lot of people, if you got an SUV, you can sleep in the back of the SUV. But if you want to sleep in a tent, you can talk to friends, probably have a tent that you can borrow. Maybe get a deal on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or Walmart, Amazon. They always have tents that are great for beginners, that are affordable, and they'll even last you several trips if you take care of it. Another myth that gets people is that they won't have a proper bathroom while they're out camping. Most of us will go camping in a prepared campground, a national park, state park, private campground, maybe an Airbnb or a hip camp. These places, particularly the state parks, Corps of Engineer parks, national parks, most hip camps, which is like an Airbnb for camping, they're going to have a regular bathroom. So you don't have to worry about trying to find the nearest tree. Now, again, if you're going to go off grid, you will have to bring your facilities with you or use Mother Nature. Remember, if you are using Mother Nature to leave no trace, that means, most times digging a hole and putting your business in there. But if you're, parking means vehicles with you, modern portable toilets are a great investment for off-grid camping. Another myth is people think they have to have special skills to go camping. And that's not true. You don't need special skills to enjoy camping. I have invested in courses to learn certain skills, but that was me enjoying a hobby. The average person who goes out camping will never even need a knife unless they're opening packaged food to cook dinner. I would encourage you to know some basic skills like what does poison ivy look like so you don't sit in it or walk through a bunch of it on a hike. And it's always fun to know how to light and manage a campfire, but you don't need to know how to navigate by compass or how to build a survival shelter out of down trees to have a good time. And you don't need to have a 4-wheel drive vehicle to go camping. Most of the places we'll go camping are perfectly accessible with the average sedan, SUV that you drive as your daily driver. You only have to worry about having 4-wheel vehicles if you're going way off grid somewhere, and you're going to know that ahead of time. And again, most of us are not camping that way. We're going to camp someplace where it's pretty easy to get to because we're here to have a good time, not try and become the next Daniel Boone.